This is the fourth day of the September 1981 7-day session, and we shall continue reading from and commenting on Wei Nang's words on the three refuges, from the chapter on repentance and resolution, from the book of the Sutra of the Sixth Patriarch, from the Buddhist Universal Church in San Francisco, translated by the brothers Feng and Feng. We'll also read quite a few selections today by Wang Po, Obaku in Japanese. Yesterday, we started with the first of the three refuges. We take refuge in Bodhi because it is the ultimate of both merit and prajna. Bodhi, meaning wisdom, non-duality, clarity, no division, truth, love and compassion. In our own formulation here, we say, I take my refuge in Buddha. And this lends itself to confusion in people's minds what Buddha is meant. Historical Buddha? Or Buddha as was just reworded in many different expressions, keeping in mind that the expression, the word, is never the real thing? Or the Buddha statue, the symbol? Also talked about the fact yesterday that in taking each of these refuges we make prostrations. One person in Doksan mentioned a deep concern over what was said. About prostrating to Buddhas. Wasn't this helpful? Implication being, I don't remember the words, was I saying there shouldn't be prostrations to Buddhas? Can you find out for yourself what the prostration means, is? To whom you're prostrating, or to what, if anything? It's always said that as one prostrates, the Buddha disappears. In the prostration, is there an idea? Does one want something? It's been said by teachers, in prostrating to Buddhas, something of this wise, I can't repeat it verbatim, one establishes relationship to Buddhas. To what Buddhas? O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas abiding in all directions. What are these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas abiding in all directions? And what is relationship? Can there be any kind of relationship when there's an idea in the mind? An idea of oneself and an idea of that Buddha, whoever he or she is. And a motive of wanting something. Whenever one wants something for oneself, one is using another person or a thing for one's own advantage. Is that relationship? True relationship? Or can there only be relationship? There's no idea of oneself, how one should be treated, what one needs or wants. No idea or image of that other person, whoever he or she may be or have been in the past. Isn't there only relationship in meeting freshly, as for the first time? Please, find this out for yourself. Investigate this. Question it. Look into it. One person not too long ago said to me, when you make a question, you really make a statement. It's not really a question, you're making a statement. It's a very interesting remark. Do these questions which are questioned here, do they become statements in your mind? I talked about this with a person, and this person said, after this was mentioned, she looked at it and she realized very often when a question is put, one immediately say yes, yes. Because one is so conditioned. Somebody asks, yes, yes, it's so. Because since you say that, since you ask that, it must be so. Is it possible to leave a question as a question and ask it oneself? Because this is why questions are asked by this person. Not so that you say, yes, yes, amen. These are not rallies, you know. Religious, political, it's the same difference. No difference. What do you say? Yes, yes. Or no, however one sort of intuits what the questioner wants to hear. I don't want to hear anything. I just want to hear the question. Let it resound in the mind. And then maybe someday, at some moment, in doing something, this question pops up and one sees what one does in the light of the question. So please, these questions are no statements. We take our refuge in the Buddha. Yesterday we read from the Buddha himself what were his words on where to take refuge. We'll read some selections from Wang Po right now. These questions of what the Buddha really is, there's nothing new, nothing unique about this. It's occupied people's minds ever since there's been what is called Buddhism. At the time of the Buddha himself, of course, there you could see him directly. And even then the Buddha said something like this, whoever understands the truth doesn't need to be near me at all. Doesn't matter where he or she is. But if one doesn't understand the truth, no matter how close you can sit in my lap. He didn't say that. And you're far away. Our beloved questioner here from Wang Po, the one who recorded this and was so frank and honest in asking all that he needed to ask was a scholar who recorded a lot of the sayings, a lot of his questions and Wang Po's replies. Says, "Yet it is recorded that, quote, whosoever possesses the 32 characteristic signs of a Buddha is able to deliver sentient beings. How can you deny it?" Maybe we should read the question that preceded this, where it was asked, does the Buddha really liberate sentient beings? And Wang Po replied, there are in reality no sentient beings to be delivered by the Tathagata. Tathagata, the Sanskrit word, means he who is thus. Thus come, thus. Sentient beings here being the concept of these sentient beings. And Wang Po continues, if even self has no objective existence, how much less has other than self? If there's no self, what can there possibly be that is other? Wang Po continues, thus neither Buddha nor sentient beings exist objectively. Which really means, in this case, as concepts which are always separating. Now comes this question, yet it is recorded that whosoever possesses the 32 characteristic signs of a Buddha is able to deliver sentient beings. How can you deny it? And Wang Po says, anything possessing any sign is illusory. We fabricate signs to allay our fears, symbols to put something in front of our eyes or minds, so they don't have to grapple with what it is that the symbol stands for directly. Wang Po, it is by perceiving that all signs are no signs that you perceive the Tathagata. When symbols are seen through or drop away, or just aren't there. Wang Po continues, Buddha and sentient beings are both your own false conceptions. It is because you do not know real mind, here spelled with a capital M, which is non-duality, no two-ness, and love and compassion. It's because you do not know real mind that you delude yourself with such objective concepts. If you will conceive of a Buddha, you will be obstructed by that Buddha. And here, Wang Blofeld makes 3 exclamation marks. And when you conceive of sentient beings, you will be obstructed by those beings. Because by thinking of all these poor sentient beings, one cannot even see one poor human being. Poor meaning in ignorance. In sorrow, in pain. Or in a fabricated high. With a fear coming through the red eyes. showing through it. All such dualistic concepts as ignorant and enlightened, pure and impure, are obstructions. It is because your minds are hindered by them that the wheel of the law must be turned. Footnote here is that the relative truths of Orthodox Buddhism must be taught. Remember we read in the first Teisho, this on period, from what is called the disciplines of Thich Nhat Hanh's order. The first, if I remember correctly, being, do not take any ideas, ideologies, religious truths, including Buddhist truths, for absolute truth. It's amazing to have this as the first precept or discipline. What freedom! Is it a precept, or does one see that? If one just thinks, now I must follow that, then one is bound again. And it's no use. Liberation is in understanding and not in following. Wang Po continues, just as apes spend their time throwing things away and picking them up again unceasingly, so it is with you and your learning. All you need is give up your learning. You're ignorant and enlightened, pure and impure, great and little, attachment and activity. Such things are mere conveniences. One person mentioned in Dokusan, every time she reads some commentary and comes upon this word satori, that satori seems to have such an edge to it in that commentary. It gives her a sting through the heart. She wonders, gosh, do I really know what satori is? So one has picked something up again. And maybe one drops it for a while and has a little peace of mind, and then one reads that again. What is satori? What is enlightenment? Some event that once happened and one can now remember? It's memory. We'll come back to that later. Such things are mere conveniences. Learning, ignorant, enlightened, pure, impure, great, little, attachment, activity. Such things or words are mere conveniences, mere ornaments within the one mind, both capitalized. I hear you have studied the sutras of the 12 divisions and the 3 vehicles. They are all mere empirical concepts. Really, you must give them up. So just discard all you've acquired as being no better than a bedspread for you when you were sick. Only when phenomena obstruct you no longer. The obstruction always being, I don't like that, or I like that. I must have that, I mustn't have that. Or else, if there's a real obstruction, walk away from it. Leave it. Don't gripe about it. Only when phenomena obstruct you no longer. Only when you've rid yourself of the whole gamut of dualistic concepts of the ignorant and the enlightened category will you at last earn the title of Transcendental Buddha. Therefore it is written, and Wang Po quotes, your prostrations are in vain. Put no faith in such ceremonies. Hide from such false beliefs. Because Huang Po himself, being the abbot of a large monastery, prostrated. How did he do it? Why did he do it? I think he answered, because I do it. We don't know. We have no videotapes or audio cassettes. Was there any bind on him? It's hard to believe when you read how he speaks. Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, which is Sanskrit for complete, total enlightenment, is a name for the realization that the Buddhas of the whole universe do, in fact, not possess the smallest perceptible attribute. There exists just one mind. Truly, there are no multiplicity of forms, no celestial brilliance, and no glorious victory over samsara, or submission to the victor. Victor here, in a footnote, it says being the Buddha. Since no glorious victory was ever won, there can be no such formal entity as a Buddha. Huang Po speaks these words out of seeing, but at the same time, they're very logical too. One follows the other very logically, but the seeing comes first. And since no submission ever took place, there can be no any such formal entities as sentient beings, meaning separate, existing in our mind as ideas. Questioner says, assuming all this is so, this is a different place. What particular state is connoted by the word Bodhi? Bodhi, supreme wisdom, understanding. And Huang Po says, Bodhi is no state. Buddha did not attain to it. Sentient beings do not lack it. It cannot be reached with the body nor sought with the mind. All sentient beings are already of one form with Bodhi. So the questioner says, but how does one attain to the Bodhi mind? And Huang Po says, Bodhi is not something to be attained. Blofeld enters a footnote, perceived, grasped, entered, realized, conceived. Grasped is the best word. Because Bodhi is seeing, perceiving purely. If at this very moment, says Huang Po, you could convince yourselves of its unattainability, which means see this grasping mind always moving away from what is here and abstaining from that at that instant. Then Huang Po continues, then you would already be Bodhi-minded. Since Bodhi is not a state, it is nothing for you to attain. Therefore is it written of Gautama Buddha, while I was yet in the realm of Dipankara Buddha, Buddha before him, not according to our list, but some kind of Buddha. There was not a grain of anything to be attained by me. Seeking outside for Buddha possessed of form has nothing to do with you. At another point, Huang Po says, when a sudden flash of thought occurs in your mind, and you see it for a dream or an illusion, then you can enter into the state reached by the Buddhas of the past, present, and future. Not that the Buddhas of the past really exist, or that the Buddhas of the future have not yet come into existence. It's just his way of wiping out time. Above all, have no longing to become a future Buddha. This longing already separates you from what sits here in agony, in frustration, in despair or sorrow or fear. It needs to be felt and sensed and worked right through. Without any word or name or explanation, it's move. It may drop away all on its own, or open up, whichever way you want to put it. Or one sees the emptiness of it all. Above all, have no longing to become a future Buddha. And that is also sometimes a subtle postponement. I can carry on a little bit longer. In the future, I'll become a Buddha. Carry on meaning inattentively. That's when we make all our mistakes. When we don't attend. Your sole concern should be, as thought succeeds thought, to avoid clinging to any of them. Can one, as thought succeeds thought, avoid clinging to any of them? Even if a Buddha arises, do not think of him as enlightened or deluded, good or evil. Hasten to rid yourself of any desire to cling to him. Cut him off in the twinkling of an eye. On no account seek to hold him fast, for 1,000 locks could not stay him, or 100,000 feet of rope bind him. This being so valiantly strive to banish and annihilate him. Which may become pretty scary. And this is exactly where the work takes place, in scariness and insecurity, without always building these pseudo-structures around ourselves, which give us a pseudo-sense of security in being taken care of, which is just not so, because they can crumble at any time. And they do. Here's another one about Buddha's relics. Many stupas in India, these round structures, beautiful shaped things, are supposed to contain relics of the Buddha. You know what relics are? Catholic people know. Bones. Joints, bits and pieces. Religions aren't so different from each other. Let's not become too proud here. One person told me, as He entered the link recently and saw that new scroll from China, blew his mind. That was Mother Mary and the Bambino. Even the rosary in the hand. He said he was given those cards in church school, or whatever it's called, catechism school. Sort of a strange feeling entering here and seeing that same thing. He also mentioned it. This canon, we have in the canon room is different. From that. So the questioner asks if the Buddha really dwells in matchless tranquility, beyond the multiplicity of forms, how is it that his body yielded 84 pecks of relics? John Blofeld writes as a footnote, this rather naive questioner is confusing the Buddha as synonymous with the Absolute, with the historical figure of Gautama. I don't know, I've never been to India. When you stand in front of those stupas, what feelings arise? Let's ask our pilgrims sometime. We all love to believe and to shudder. Wang Po says, if you really think like that, you're confusing the transitory relics with the real. Questioner, are there really such things as sariras? This must be these are the Buddha relics, or sariras. Sariras. Or are they the Buddha's accumulated merits? He's asking maybe what is spoken of here is the Buddha's accumulated merits. And Huang Po says there's no such things, there are no merits. They're not merits. And the questioner says, then why is it written the Buddha relics are ethereal and subtle? The golden ones are indestructible. What does your reverence say to that? And Wang Po says, if you harbor such beliefs, why call yourself a student of Zen? Can you imagine bones in the void? That's Wang Po saying. The minds of all the Buddhas are one with the great void. What bones do you expect to find there? Questioner, but if I had actually seen some of these relics, what then? Don't you love him? Wang Po, you would have seen the products of your own wrong thinking. Questioner, does your reverence have any of those relics? Please let us see them. And Wang Po says a true relic would be hard to see. To find it, you would have to crush mighty Mount Sumeru to find dust, using only your bare hands. Do you know what Mount Sumeru stands for? In the ancient cosmology, Indian cosmology, it was the world axis. Actually, Mount Sumeru. It comes from Sumeria. That was in the Middle East. It shows how mythology traveled the world over. So this Mount Sumeru, from Sumeria in the Middle East, legends about that travel to India. And so the world axis seen as a huge mountain, was called Mount Sumeru. And in Zen metaphor, what's the hugest mountain there is? It's the me. So Wangpo says a true relic would be hard to see. To find it, you would have to crush mighty Mount Sumeru to find dust, using only your bare hands. Or maybe if no hands are used, maybe it crumbles on its own. Oh. The second refuge, we take refuge in perfect view, because it is the ultimate of the abandoning of desires. We talked yesterday about this perfect view being no bias, no shadow, no partiality, no me, no Mount Sumeru in the middle. If there is no me, then there are no desires. Which doesn't mean that that emotions aren't evoked, feelings. We talked about this. Is one really sensitive, profoundly sensitive to one's feelings? Not repress them or evaluate them. Feel shame about them or guilt, but see them, feel them, without immediately translating them into fantasy, ideas, images. That's where the separation starts, not in the feelings themselves, if one is with it. Biological urges arise. Is one with it? Or the fantasizing of oneself doing this or that, being with this or that person. If you're in bed with a man or woman, you don't have to fantasize, but one still does, very often, doesn't one? Or is it just a pure act? Without any fantasy before, during, and after. Our second precept, we say, I take my refuge in Dharma, and resolve with all beings that I will enter deeply into the Dharma treasure, so that my wisdom may grow as vast as the ocean. The Dharma treasure, we used to say sutra treasure. Dharma treasure. What is the Dharma? Dharma, of course, is a word for the Buddha's teachings, as recorded in the sutras, which are often very hard to read, poorly translated, A lot of redundancy in it. We just picked a few sayings of the Buddha's teaching. Before we'll go on to say what else Dharma stands for. One time the Buddha said, "Surely by oneself evil is done. By oneself one becomes impure, by oneself evil is avoided, and by oneself one becomes pure." Purity and impurity are of the individual. No one purifies another. Yet if one observes carefully, we spend so much more effort and thought into how could we purify that person. The Bible speaks about seeing the splinter in the brother's eye and not the beam, the log, in one's own. Here, another time he says, "Seek for profound knowledge. Seek for that which will best aid you. There's nothing like uninterrupted attention." If there's one whose attention is continually uninterrupted, none of the three robbers, desire, anger, and folly, will be able to enter his mind. Because no one is ever uninterruptedly attentive. And there's anger. There's something stupid one does or says. And then there's a tension of that. And then does it come to an end? Only if one isn't too attached to that anger, or to what has just been taking place. One may just want to enjoy that a little bit longer, or else there's a tremendous momentum behind it. Momentum of very deep, strong, heavy conditioning. Can this be seen? Irradiated with attention, which is energy. If your power of attention is very great, though you fall among the five robbers, all these things, desire, folly, ignorance, greed, and more than five, you will not be harmed by them, just as a man who enters battle well covered with armor has nothing to fear. Such is the meaning of uninterrupted attention. Does one want this attention so one has finally an impenetrable armor? And there is again desire, wanting something. Or does one realize that when there's attention, things don't take root in the mind. They come up and they wither. He is more on attention. Moreover, brethren, a brother, whether he departs or returns, whether he looks at or away from things, whether he has drawn in or stretched out his limbs, whether he has donned underrobe, overrobe, or bowl, whether he's eating, drinking, chewing, reposing, or whether he's obeying the calls of nature, is aware of what he is about. Or she's not included, excluded. Buddha, much over the objections of his monks, allowed nuns to enter the order, allowed women to enter the order. In going, standing, sitting, sleeping, watching, talking, or keeping silence, He knows what he's doing. Does he? I am is a vain thought. I am not is a vain thought. I shall be is a vain thought. I shall not be is a vain thought. Vain thoughts are a sickness, an ulcer, a thorn. One who has overcome vain thoughts, we usually say, seen through. Because this overcoming still has this idea of the one who overcomes and the conqueror, the victor. One who has seen through vain thoughts is called a silent thinker. You see, the word thought in these olden times was not only used for thoughts, but for each instant of consciousness, thinking or not. And there's also a place for sane thinking. And the thinker, the silent one, the silent thinker, does no more arise, no more pass away, no more tremble, and no more desire. Desire here being the creation of fantasy, seeing oneself with this or with that, doing this or doing that, and then all of oneself going after that, what has been visualized. All that is the result of thought. All that is the result of thought. It is founded on thought. It is made of thought. If a man speaks or acts with an evil thought, pain follows him, as the wheel follows the foot of the ox that draws the cart. It's a plain fact which can be observed by everybody. If a man speaks or acts with a pure thought, happiness follows him like a shadow that never leaves him. Here's another quote of a woman came in utter sorrow and grief over the death of her daughter, asking, looking for comfort. And the Buddha said, "Mother, you cry out, O Jiva." Jiva was the name of the daughter. In the wood. Understand yourself, Ubiri. 84,000 daughters, all with the name Jiva, have burned on this funeral pile. Which one do you grieve for? One gets locked in one's own personal grief, and yet death is all around one. And therefore, ye disciples, the gain of the holy life is neither alms, nor honors, nor fame, neither the virtues or rules of the monastic order, nor the bliss of samadhi, nor clearness of insight, but the unconditional, unalterable deliverance of the mind. This, ye disciples, is the purpose of the holy life. This is its central core. This is the goal. We'll stop here for today. The four vows.
All beings without number.
I vow to liberate endless blind passions. I vow to uproot Dharma gates beyond measure. I vow to penetrate the great way of the Buddha. I vow to attain all beings without number. I vow to liberate endless blind passion. I vow to uproot Dharma gates beyond measure. I vow to penetrate the great way of the Buddha. I vow to attain all beings without number. I vow to liberate endless blind passion.